Welcome back to Fast Market here on the Schwab Network. It's time for cash tags. For that, let's bring in our Andy Swan, co-founder at Likefolio. Andy, welcome to the show. Happy Friday.
Thank you. Happy Friday.
All right, so we're talking Affirm. They got some good news recently. Apple's getting out of the business as far as buy now, pay later at this point. That seems to be a bonus for Affirm, but this stock's down 40% so far this year. It got a bump up on that news, but it's already filled that gap to the downside, with these losses. But it seems like if you look at their earnings, they're getting better, right? They're expanding their footprint. They're growing their GMV, or gross merchandise volume, pretty steadily on a quarter by quarter basis. What kind of data do you have that maybe goes against this downside move that we've seen in the stock?
Yeah, I think the downside move in the stock, a lot of that's related to just the overall condition of the economy and the credit markets. There's a lot of fear of delinquencies on the horizon, and that these companies are taking on undue risk, which I really can't speak to. What at Likefolio we're going to speak to is consumer demand levels and how much consumers enjoy or don't enjoy interacting with these companies. I can tell you overall, the consumer is more and more likely to engage with buy now, pay later services like Affirm. Consumers increasingly trust these services. They like these services. They like putting these on a payment plan that is really well known in advance rather than on a credit card, which they can kind of let slip. So I think these companies, overall are servicing a growing market of consumers that overall like the service. And Affirm, from Likefolio data perspective, is by far the leader of the pack in terms of that group. If you look at consumer happiness levels over the past 30 days, Affirm very, very high compared to its peers. 64% happiness rating versus the others, barely above 50% or below 50% is quite a huge gap. So they've really nailed the consumer experience from a customer service standpoint, from a clarity of use standpoint. Normally we really don't like that much the companies that we owe money to, but Affirm seems to be doing pretty well with that. And from a web visits perspective, we're seeing Affirm just up and to the right in terms of overall usage. So, we see what the stock market sees in terms of overall credit market, disruptions, there's problems with the consumer, understand all of that. But from a long-term perspective, if you're picking a winner out of this group, out of the buy now, pay later group, which is expanding, then it clearly is Affirm.
Andy, a couple things. They are clearly the leader in this industry, but there's a term I like to use called summer school valedictorian. They're the best of a very bad group that may not have a great future, and the chart of the stock doesn't look great, and operating losses cover half their revenue, and Apple getting out of this business. I understand why the stock reacted positively, but I'm not sure it's great news if a big player like this saying, yeah, I've had enough of this.
Yeah, exactly right. I think, there's always that angle of partnership with Apple always sounds good. I think this is what you're saying. Partnership with Apple always sounds good until you realize that Apple wants out of the business that you're in.
Yes.
And who's probably smarter about understanding that business. But that said, beyond the mobile device usage, I think Affirm rolling out its own debit cards has been a pretty big deal. I think that their partnerships with Booking.com and Royal Caribbean have been very good. They really know how to integrate with these big brands that need a buy now, pay later service. And again, customers seem to really like this. Now, the business itself of loaning money to people that can't necessarily afford a $70 product today, we can debate the merits of that business. But if you're in that business and if you want exposure to that business, then what Likefolio data is going to tell you is that there's Affirm and there's really no second place.
Right.
Yeah, and Andy, I call this, buy now, pay later, the modern day layaway plans that used to be popular when I was young many, many years ago at this point. But when you look at the moves in the stock and down 40% so far this year, do you guys start looking at it? I saw some analyst commentary on this. They like this because their scale is going to continue to grow. It's not going away, but then they also have some headwinds from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau also that might hit them with some regulations like credit cards at this point. So is this an opportunity in Likefolio's eyes, or is there more downside?
Yeah, I think the answer is both. I think that there is opportunity. You have to have a long-term view, and you have to buy into the business of lending money directly to consumers that are, otherwise potentially credit challenged. So you have to get over that hurdle. And once you're over that hurdle, then I think there is a strong opportunity for this company to do very well over the long term. But there is also still significant risk in the near term. So if I were thinking about this, I would be thinking about this as add it to my watch list, or dollar cost average, or sell some puts, that are pretty far away. Those type of things those type of trades you guys are so good at constructing. I don't think that there's any urgency to getting in this company right now. The retraction after the Apple partnership bump pretty much tells the story that it's a sell first, ask questions later company at the moment. And so I expect that to continue for the foreseeable future. But from a regulatory standpoint, I'll tell you, a lot of times regulatory actions can really help the leader in a new field. And Affirm is clearly the leader. And so if they can get involved and get that regulatory moat around the business that they're building, we saw that work very well for Coinbase. It could work very well for Affirm. So I see that as, kind of a double-edged sword. It could be a very positive thing in the future, but you have to like the business. And if you do, I think that you've got time to build a position. Is the way I would put it on Affirm. Yeah,
regulatory guidelines that, gives people a little bit of added assurances, I guess you could say. Yeah. All right, great stuff. As always, Andy, have a great weekend.
Thank you, you too.
All right, that's Andy Swan, co-founder at Likefolio, breaking down the data for us. Kev, it's been in a downturn. I like that whole aspect, like, hey, if it's fallen, like Andy said, from when Apple came out with this news, they're getting out, firm's going to benefit from that, and it's still falling. And then you start looking at consumer sentiment data, confidence numbers next week. Is the consumer going to still be under pressure where they're just not going to spend and not use the product?
Yeah, one of our